In the Spanish capital Madrid, a line snakes around the block. People are queuing up at the Peruvian consulate to complete their paperwork, a crucial step toward a life out of the shadows after Spain announced plans to legalize 500,000 undocumented migrants.
Sí, ya exactamente, están viniendo bastante, por eso hay mucha gente ahorita, hay mucha gente, hay mucha demanda. Por esa parte, ahora ya el consulado para lleno. Uy, adentro está rebalsando la gente. Entonces, a raíz de eso, a veces los documentos también ya se demora mucho. Tú sabes que hacer los trámites de tanta gente. Yo digo por eso.
It's one of the largest amnesties in European history, a defiantly humanitarian and economic move that goes against the migration policies carried out in many other European countries. The Spanish government calls this a moral imperative. The migration minister says it's about, quote, dignifying and recognizing people who are already in our country. But the reasons run deeper. Spain's economy is booming and it needs workers.
There's a very economic reason of bringing them into the system so they're contributing and hopefully become long-term contributors to Spain's social security system.
Like most European countries, Spain has an aging population and needs migrants to run the economic engine. They have already filled crucial roles in agriculture, tourism, and services, the backbone of the economy. This move aims to bring a hidden workforce into the light, collecting taxes and boosting social security, say experts.
Having a workforce that is precarious, without status, it's basically a loss for the country in terms of taxes. It also creates a population which is living in the underground, has no access to public services.
Spain's move stands in stark contrast to the prevailing wind in Europe. Recently, the European Commission announced a stricter migration and asylum strategy, focusing on border controls and return hubs outside EU countries. The bloc is also pushing for more legal migration and recently signed a deal with India to attract skilled legal workers. The EU's dominant narrative is one of control, driven by a decade of rising arrivals.
This is all part of a general, very hostile trend on migration that is not really based on evidence, but it's mainly based on rhetorical propaganda and political interest. That's why I think this new measure is very significant, because bring the debates really finally on evidence, and especially on human rights and the real also needs of our society and countries.
Spain hosts more than 800,000 undocumented migrants, compared to 100,000 just 8 years ago. The country has registered an expected growth of 3% for 2025 and has outperformed major EU economies. Unemployment has also fallen to single digits for the first time since 2008. Some economists have connected Spain's growth to its migration policy. Foreign nationals now make up more than 14% of the workforce in the country. Admittedly, experts note that most asylum seekers there are from Latin America, that is, other Spanish-speaking countries whose language and culture ease integration.
This also makes a huge difference because, again, they're easier to integrate, they speak the language. A lot of these things that cause irritants to people on the right and see it as their culture being diluted in some way, right, is really less so with Latin American migrants coming into Spain.
But the proposed law is not limited to Latin Americans. Anyone who has lived in Spain for at least 5 months by the end of last year is eligible. Early February saw queues of Pakistanis outside their consulates, seeking the non-criminal record certificate required for regularization.
Actually, first of all, we are grateful and extremely thankful to the government of Spain for introducing these immigration reforms, where mostly the undocumented people, persons working here, who are being used to being exploited, they could not find jobs, they are being documented. So as a part of general amnesty which is declared by the government.
Here's the crucial context. Spain's amnesty is a one-time solution for people already inside the country. It is not an open door, says the government, since those living abroad cannot benefit. The program gives migrants 1 year to secure employment, after which their residence permit can be renewed. They will not gain voting rights, and citizenship still requires living in Spain for up to 10 years.
When you do a regularization and impose too many restrictions on how to find a job, what kind of job you can find, what the role that you give to the employer in terms, this creates so much of bureaucratic difficulties that often the migrant worker, even if they find a job, they find difficult to move to the next step.
Critics argue the amnesty could act as a pull factor, rewarding irregular entry. Far-right demonstrations have taken place in opposition to the initiative. Yet Spain's experience tells a different story. In 2005, Spain regularized up to 700,000 people, and that did not trigger an increase in arrivals.
I mean, there were no peaks of migrants arriving to Spain after the regularization. On the contrary, I would say that a country that regularized a big number of people on the basis of their presence in Spain before a concrete date is that people can guess that no other regularizations will happen in the next period.
Meanwhile, the EU's push for stricter borders and legal skills-based deals, like the agreement with India to attract students and researchers, signals that the era of unpredictable, dangerous journeys is meant to be over. The human cost of irregular migration is staggering. According to the International Organization for Migration, nearly 30,000 people have gone missing or died in the Mediterranean since 2014, making it the world's deadliest migration route. Spain's decision does not change this brutal reality. The EU's fundamental stance remains that the only safe and sustainable way to Europe is through legal pathways.
The difference is that they're not inviting people to come here. They're inviting people who've been here for 5 months already.
In a continent torn between fear and pragmatism, Spain has chosen a third way, addressing the reality on the ground. But its success hinges on a clear message. Amnesty is not an invitation. Legal pathways are the only way forward.
Very often, anti-migration sentiment and also immigration enforcement against irregular migrants become very much a way for re-establishing the hierarchies in society, to make even a citizen with a migrant heritage to feel like unwelcome or a second-class citizen. So what we are seeing here is a way of pointing out how the regularization, giving rights, is still something that is part of the DNA of the European project.
Applications for the regularization program will remain open until June 30th, 2026. For the 500,000 people waiting in consulates across Spain, the coming months will determine whether they will finally step out of the shadows and whether Spain's bold approach could shape the future migration policy in Europe. Berlin, Paris, and Rome are surely watching closely.